Welcome to Fishers Island Library. I'm Bonnie Bankard. I'm the president of the Fishers Island Library Association, and we are delighted to have, oh my gosh, no, this is all about you. It's all about Roberta. So I have a couple of notes. I want to make sure that we could hear my introduction in our video. Before we get started, I want to remind you we do have programs every Tuesday in the summers. Next Tuesday is Murray Fisher talking about rewilding our lawns. It's in collaboration with the Conservancy. So I hope you'll come to that Tuesday evening at 5:30. Oh, the museum, sorry. I always make whatever. Thank Courtney McDonald is back here with us too. She's our program chair. So she's responsible for a lot of the programs that we've had this summer, which has been great. We also have Tot's Story Time on Tuesday mornings, which has been a lot of fun. And we've had a couple of other family events. We had Mr. Magic a couple of weeks ago. That was a great success too. So we've been doing a lot of great things at the library this summer. Roberta is one of 6 authors who have visited the Fishers Island Library this summer. Most of them have come. We still have several that are on deck for August. So we've been really fortunate to have a great collection of authors coming to present their books. I already talked about our videos. And a lot of our authors that are coming are local authors. Her husband, Arthur, is also an author. His books are on the shelf over there. And if you ever look in the little alcove around the corner where the computers are, there are shelves there of island authors' books. So through the years, we've been really fortunate to have island authors who come and share their works, or even if they don't come and share their works, we like to feature them. We also have a new collection in the front of our Lighthouse Works Fellows books. So Lighthouse Works is collaborating with us on that so that their fellows will always bring copies of their books, either that they write while they're working here or that they have written in their careers, so that we have a collection of their books up in the front too, which has been a great thing this summer. So we really appreciate that. So on to Roberta. I'm trying to keep the microphone still. I'll forget that. Roberta, as you probably know, has lived all over the world. She has traveled. She's a graduate of Bryn Mawr College. And this is her first novel, The Man Who Slept with the Mona Lisa. It has been described as blending fact and memory, telling the story of her stepfather, Gerald Van der Kemp, from his modest childhood in the Loire Valley to the Louvre, the French Resistance, and eventually Curator of Versailles, told from a variety of perspectives, which I think is fascinating, including the voice of the Mona Lisa herself. So it's a sweeping tale that spans war, art, and legacy, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about it from Roberta. So I'm going to hand it over to her.
Thank you. So thank you all very much for a good afternoon and coming here. And I confess, I am the author of this 588-page book, which took me over 30 years to write. And I am also the 4th wife of Arthur Houghton, who's been living with you and enjoying every minute of it since he was 6. So I imagine you're wondering about the title, The Man Who Slept with the Mona Lisa. Who could it be? What was he in the time of the High Renaissance? Was he Italian, French? Was he in the 20th century? And who was he? Well, he was my stepfather, Gerald Van der Kemp, and he had her at the end of his bed during World War II. And he said she was the one woman who he never tired of. Now, the title, the Man Who Slept with the Mona Lisa, actually was given to him by the international press. And he was also known as the man who saved the Mona Lisa, which he did during World War II, together with all the works of art of the Louvre and other museums from being burned. And he was also known as a 20th century Sun King, Louis XIV, because he was head of the Museum of Versailles for many years. I don't know if you all know who the Mona Lisa actually was a portrait of. It was Lisa Gherardini, who was a beautiful young Italian aristocrat. And she was married off at the age of 16 to a man 19 years older than she, called Francesco di Bartolomeo di Zanobi del Gioconda, which is why she's also known as La Gioconda. Then, let me see, she was always a Gioconda, and then, yes. So, in 1503, he decided, after she had given him 4 children, that he was going to build a lovely house for her and have her portrait painted by Leonardo da Vinci. In 1503 as well, Giuliano de' Medici, who was a scion of the famous Medici family who ruled Florence, and the future Pope Clement VII. He was also secretly in love with his relative Lisa Gherardini, so he asked Leonardo to make a portrait of her. Well, Leonardo's fashion, I would imagine what he did was he accepted the commission from both of them, took the money, which he never returned, and painted the Mona Lisa basically for himself between 1503 and 1506, and kept her with him for the rest of his life, retouching her occasionally, and she went with him everywhere. And she was with him when he died in France in 1519. So why was she in France, you wonder, and not in Italy? Well, the French king, Francis I, happened to be enamored of the high Italian Renaissance, and he found that the people he governed, the French, were a backward nation, and he wanted to bring them into the high Renaissance world. So when he couldn't bring back the Leonardo's Last Supper from Milano, it was a fresco, so it was stuck to the wall. So what did he do? Well, he did the kingly thing. He made Leonardo an offer that he could not refuse. He gave him a stipend, a place to live in the Clos Lucé near him in Amboise, where he could go and visit him. And so Leonardo brought himself, all of his entourage, and all of his works of art to France. When he died in 1519, Francis I had built himself a lovely spa in Fontainebleau, and which consisted of 6 rooms. 3 were for lounging around and talking, and 3 were for, of course, spa activities. And he decided to bring all of his collections there of Italian paintings, which of course had the Mona Lisa and Leonardo's and Andrea del Sarto, Primaticcio, and his collections of Greek and Roman statues. So you could actually say that the Louvre Museum was started in the spa of Fontainebleau. So the Mona Lisa remained in the French royal family at Versailles with Louis XIV after Francis I's death until the revolution in 1789, when the Mona Lisa became the property of the French people. And she was sent to the Louvre Museum, which was open in Paris, with all the rest of the other art from the French royal kings. There she stayed, as you know, except for a couple of unfortunate incidences and one nice incident. The unfortunate incidences, at least 3 of them, were the warmongering Germans. There was the Napoleon III's 1870 Franco-Prussian War. Then there was World War I, and then there was World War II, when with Hitler and everyone, and that's when Gerald had her in his room at the end of his bed. Then there was also another unhappy incident in 1911 when this Italian ignorant peasant called Vincenzo Perugia, he put her under his smock and walked out of the Louvre Museum with her. The nice event that happened was when Jackie Kennedy had been on her triumphal visit to Versailles with Jack. She hit on the idea of giving the first blockbuster exhibition starring the Mona Lisa in Washington, D.C. at the National Gallery of Art. Well, she was helped by Gerald, by André Malraux, who was then Minister of Culture, and General de Gaulle, who, of course, was smitten by her. And on the side in the United States, she was helped by Johnny Walker, who was a friend of the family's and a friend of hers, and Paul Mellon, who was delighted to make up any slack for the finances, with the transportation and of the Mona Lisa and everything. So I guess you're wondering how and where did my stepfather come from, and what did he accomplish? So my stepfather was born in the rural Loire Valley and may have remained there forever, but I don't think so because of his personality. In 1929, with a famous world crash, his family lost all their money and they were forced to sell the house and the gardens that he loved so much. So Gerald, who was college age, thought that, he couldn't be a burden to his family any longer. So he had to go off and earn his living. And go to college. So off he went to Paris, and there he was impoverished and dejected, but he had read the British author P.C. Wren's book, Beau Geste, and seen the movies with Ronald Colman. So he decided which romanticized, and glorified the French Foreign Legion. So he thought, well, why not join the French Foreign Legion, which he did. He realized immediately what a huge mistake he had made. And it took him 2 years to get out of that. So back to Paris he went, and then he completed his studies at the École du Louvre and the Archéologie, and he started making his circle of influential friends, like Daniel Wildenstein, the mega billionaire and art gallery dealer, et cetera, and his professors at the Louvre, who immediately hired their star student upon graduation to work with them at the Louvre cataloging the collections of the Rothschilds. However, on the horizon loomed Hitler and the Nazis. So Gerald was forced to help everybody pack up and transport everything in the Louvre to the depot at Valençay. The depot at Valençay belonged to the Duke of Talleyrand, and he had given his castle to the French government for the works of art to be stored there in case there was a war or anything. Being very patriotic, after Gerald did that, he immediately joined up with the French army. He was at Dunkirk and escaped to England, where he was stuck in a derelict camp and decided this was not for him. So after 2 weeks, he took the first freighter back to Normandy, enrolled in the army, what remained of the French army, was captured and then escaped from the Germans and walked over 400 kilometers to the safety of the free zone, or Vichy, which was run by General Pétain and Laval. There at the castle of Valençay, he was first helped Karl Dreyfus, but as Karl Dreyfus was Jewish, Gerald took over and ran the whole depot. There he joined the French resistance. Actually, the resistance there in the Loire Valley was known as the Maquis de Vénus because the Venus de Milo was there as well among the slaves of Michelangelo and the Nike of Samothrace. They were all at Valençay. On August 16th, 1944, Gerald was to save all of the works of art from being burnt by Major Diekman, and all of the people who were going to be shot, as well as himself, from the Nazis and Major Diekman. Major Diekman had just come from the massacres of Oradour, in which he had burnt 649 women and children in the church alive. Then he proceeded on to Tulle, where he had hung over 100 men from the lamppost. And he was going towards Valençay, where he'd started incinerating the town. And he arrived in the castle, and he had Gerald against the ramparts of the wall with the firing squad, and all of the personnel and the guards on the grass with bayonets at them. And Gerald managed to prevail and save them, because he asked Major Diekman, who was actually, I forgot to tell you, Major Diekman was head of the Totenkopf, which means dead head, Das Reich Division, Panzer Division of tanks. So he said to Major Diekman, if you burn all of the treasures that are here in the castle of Valençay, you are committing a crime against humanity, which is bigger than the burning of all of the library in Alexandria. And when Hitler hears about it, he will have you shot and all of your men shot. To which Major Diekman replied, but I make a war, not history of art. Then Gerald came up with a fabulous idea, which wasn't far from the truth. He asked Major Diekman, why do you think that all of these treasures are here at Valençay? It's because Hitler and Mussolini want it that way. They are waiting for the end of the war so that they can figure out who gets what and divide it up. Well, Gerald actually had the great joy and the privilege of taking the Mona Lisa in his arms back to Paris. He carried her into the Louvre, up the stairs where the Nike of Samothrace was, and placed her once again where she hung. And on either side were the throngs of people with tears of joy in their eyes, because they thought, well, the Mona Lisa is back where she was before and safe and sound. And so therefore France is whole again and safe and sound. So that was very nice, very good story. So now you're probably all wondering when I first met my stepfather. Well, I was an innocent girl from a junior year at Bryn Mawr. I was going to study at the École du Louvre and live with my mother in Paris. So I arrived on the threshold of the house Mother had rented in Boulevard Beau Séjour, and Mother said to me, we are going out at 6. Put on your gold and black lace dress that the seamstress in Mexico has made. And off we went. And you have to be ready. So, of course, I was a dutiful daughter. I was ready. So off we went. And to my astonishment, we arrived at the gates of the castle of Versailles, where they had photographers and flashing lights and lots of women in beautiful long gowns and bejeweled, and men in black and ties and white ties. And shortly afterwards, we were escorted into the theater and placed right under the central balcony box. Then the trumpets blared, and out came in the box President Jack Kennedy of the United States and his wife Jackie, and the President de Gaulle and his wife Yvonne. Well, my stepfather loved women, and women loved Gerald. He was the ideal French lover. And at that time, he was having an affair with Jackie as well as Mother. But Mother was a very jealous woman, so she got her revenge when Jack was killed. She had forced Gerald to burn the 80 love letters he had from Jackie. Also, I think you're probably wondering why did I start this book? Well, I started it because there's been always a great jealousy surrounding my stepfather, and still is actually in France. And he was never given the credit for doing all the things that he did, like saving, oh, wait a minute. Did I tell you? Yes, I probably have told you also that at a certain point afterwards that he met my mother and married my mother. And they were a fabulous team. They were the it team of their generation. And mother is the one who went to, when they had to set up the foundation of Versailles, she went to her friend, President Nixon, and asked him for the first international tax deduction, which she got. So therefore, you can say all of the international tax deductions were started from her. But basically, and then they gave all incredible dinners, and everybody wanted to go to their dinners because they had They had the donors from before, the future donors, the international jet set, the Hollywood, all of the intelligentsia, all of the artists and musicians, the writers, all of their generation. So they all went to their dinners and they knew them. So back to Louis, how I started writing this book. It's because I didn't feel that he was given all the credit that he should have had. And also, so there were 3 incidences which really helped me with the book. And one of them was the 42nd Street Library in New York, where I went in and did a research on all of these newspapers and found out that the famous visit, for instance, of Jack and Jackie Kennedy was on the second page, and that Baptiste had been killed, and it was the first page. But of course, nowadays, who knows about Baptiste? But everybody knew that Jackie Kennedy went to Paris, and it was a triumph. Then I had my friends at the Louvre, Sabine de la Rochefoucauld, and Sébastien Sfumaroli, who was head of the Amis du Louvre, and Lieuvin and Fontenelle. And I went on 2 invaluable trips with them. One of them to Florence and the town of Vinci, where Leonardo was born and raised. And then the second trip was to Milano. Also, they introduced me to the head of the library at the Louvre Museum, which was still in the Louvre then, in one of the courts. It hadn't been transferred to the Mitterrand Library. And the head librarian there was fabulous. Nobody can remember his name now. I can't, and nobody at the Louvre can either. But he told me all sorts of interesting anecdotes, showed me all sorts of letters which were unavailable, and photographs and everything. So he was indispensable. Then the third group of people who really helped me were I was on a trip in Azerbaijan with Éric Padnotre, whose mother had been a minister in Charles de Gaulle's government. And I asked him, I thought about it, how can I find out more about my stepfather? So he said, well, call up the Bibliothèque Nationale, which is, as you know, the Library of Congress of France. Well, I thought, I don't think I'll get much information from that. However, when I called the Bibliothèque Nationale up, they gave me everything they had. They sent me all over Paris and to everything that was there. But best of all, they introduced me to Claude Doucet, who was then the mayor of Valençay, who put me in touch with Serge Gatinel, who was head of the castle of Valençay, and André Beau. André Beau had been a young boy at the time of World War II at Valençay when my stepfather was there. And his mother basically ran the Duke of Valençay's household, and his father took care of the Duke's horses and collections of automobiles. So he called me up in New York and said he was dying, and I had to come quickly because he wanted to tell me and show me all. So I got on the plane and went to see him, and he did tell me enormous amount of things and show me where my stepfather first arrived and where he had to sleep in the sort of courtyard with all of the manure, and then afterwards where he slept in the apartment on top of all of the only he and the head of the museums, of all the museums, Georges in France, knew that underneath the bed that he slept was a large safe which had all of the crown jewels of France. And what else did he tell me? Also, they showed me this enormous stone that they had right next to it, and that served as an ice box in that era because you used to put in the ice or whatever, the champagne, and it came out also anyway. So that was really very valuable information. So there's another thing I haven't told you about my stepfather, and that is that he is responsible for putting American fashion on the map and changing the world of fashion and bringing it to what it is nowadays. This happened in the south of France on one August day, and I was there with him in the swimming pool. I was doing laps in the swimming pool at the Fiorentina. And that's Saint-Jean-Cap-Ferrat, which I'm sure you all know about. And Gerald was bored and, all of these lunches and dinners. So Eleanor Lambert came down, equally bored, to have some fun. I don't know if you know who Eleanor Lambert is. Eleanor Lambert is the woman who basically invented the career of fashion publicist, and she put American fashion on the map with Gerald. She created the New York Fashion Week, the Coty Awards, the Best Dressed Women's List, the Best Dressed Men's List, the Costume Institute with Diana Vreeland, and she went to Congress to make sure that fashion was considered an art. So my stepfather, bored, said to her, well, think of a way in which I can make money for Versailles. So she said, I only know fashion. And he said, well, I can give you the theater of Marie Antoinette. So she thought a second, why not a competition between French haute couture and American ready-to-wear? So the plot was hatched. Then they asked Marie-Hélène de Rothschild to organize and run everything, which Marie-Hélène did. And she paid for everything with no tax deductions then. She made all of the beautiful sapphire blue, and then they had fabulous with gold and silver fleur-de-lis, all of the liveried guards she paid for, all of the alcohol, the flowers, the food, and everything. Anyway, so this competition was called by John Fairchild. It was baptized the Battle of Versailles. But he, of course, pretended his name was, and you'll like this, Marie Antoinette Esterhazy. Because Marie Antoinette, of course, was, Queen Mary. And Esterhazy was the royal family of the Habsburgs, rather a very well-known family of the Habsburgs. So so the competition with the French side was, the best way I can describe it is school skits. They had floating pumpkin sort of floats. Then they had hippopotamuses, spacecraft, and they had Josephine Baker with the crazy horse, but she was aging at that point. And it and a 40-piece orchestra. And it lasted over an hour and a half. And we were all very bored and, wanted to, exit. However, we thought, oh God, here comes the Americans who are going to be another hour and a half, but we have to sit through all of it and we can't go and see our friends and have dinner. Well, the Americans put on a spiffy Broadway musical starring Liza Minnelli with beautiful black models who danced to the music and the first black designer, and it was a hit. I mean, we all got up in the theater, threw our programs in the air, yelled and clapped. Well, I would like to finish my talk like the Americans, shorter rather than long and lengthy, and turn it over to all of you in case you have any questions you'd like to ask me.